Welcome back to another Game Time Discussions. I'm Emery Cuzzy. I'm sitting here with Cameron Selby, and we're going to do the first main core plays, kind of talk about all of our, how we see the slate going for the main for week one. It's, I believe, 13 games, so it's going to be a lot, and we're going to go through everything as we can, positions, talking about highest totals, some of those things. Yeah,
it's a very exciting time. It's week one. It's time to make some lines, and we're building in real time because, we got a week now, 6 days until the main slate kicks off.
Right.
It's going to be a very exciting slate of games. We'll go through the 5 highest totals real quick, and then we'll start kind of breaking down what our thoughts are on each slate. So 5 highest totals: Arizona, Buffalo, 47.5. Positive game environment there. Tennessee, Chicago was a surprising being a part of it, but we think that could be a very interesting tournament route. I think Houston and Indy is going to be a very popular way to go. That's a 49 total. I believe that's the highest on the slate. And then we go down here. It's Washington, Tampa Bay at 44. Usually not that high of a total. And then also you got Jacksonville, Miami to round it out. That'll be a popular one as well.
Right. So I'll jump it on the screen now. We'll start with quarterbacks, of course. And I want to start by saying something. We used to watch a guy named Al Smizzle. Everybody used to follow him. He was one of the OGs that did this. He is now not in the game. He's recently stopped doing YouTube, but he has taught me when I was when I had no idea how to do these slates, kind of just how to think about, making these lines. And he broke it down into this way of like 4 main decisions. So what we're going to do is we're going to teach you how to do that. We loved his style, and we're going to stay with that for a little, at least for the main stuff. And as you get more and do it more often, if you do 150 lineups, you can't follow this necessarily, but it's very good for just like one lineup, hand building, super new guys to this game and sport. And that starts with the quarterback. The quarterback is going to decide 4 different spots in your lineup. That's pretty crazy, in my opinion. The first guy we're going to look at is Josh Allen. Josh Allen is in what we talked about, one of the best game environments with Arizona. He is the best quarterback for fantasy because of this rushing upside he has. In the KC game last year in the playoffs, 12 attempts, 72 yards, 2 touchdowns. Like, he is just going to go crazy. He had 15 total rushing touchdowns last year, I believe. 15 is what I believe, and then 33 regular touchdowns. He is just going to ball out as much as he can, and in a game environment like this, I love it.
Yeah, I mean, look at that points per game, 26, and that's like a floor for him on most days. He has the upside for 100 rushing yards and a touchdown. He has the upside for 300 passing yards and a couple touchdowns. He does turn the ball over, but guess what? You don't really get that much of a penalty for that. It's just -1. He's just very easy to get to this week. All of his options are cheap. His highest skill player, other than James Cook, which typically you don't really correlate quarterbacks with running back builds, or if you're going to double, Kincaid is 5,800 as the most expensive pass catcher.
Right.
And then everybody else is in a group. Khalil Shakir, 51, Keon Coleman, 5, and Curtis Samuel, 49.
Yep.
I don't know at all who is going to be the guy in that one, but it's really easy to get to at least one of those, and then Dalton Kincaid, and maybe that's something that we might be looking at when we do builds.
Right, exactly. And then the next guy that we're going to talk about is going to be Tua. This Jacksonville-Miami game is interesting too. Tua, he does not rush. He has no rushing upside, but he does have 2 really good receivers that you can get in this slate. One of them might not be playing, so then the concentration of targets will go to Tyreek Hill. He is going to be playing. I know he was questionable because of the hand injury, but he is going to be playing, and Tua has the upside. And if it's a Tyreek Hill Tua connection the whole time and you get 40%, you're going to have a very good day if you have the Tyreek Hill side of it.
Yeah, so right now there was an update that just came out, and Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill are both practicing today. Perfect. There was no setback, so as of right now, you have to go with the intention they are both playing. Jalen Waddle is 6,300. Typically, he's been in the high 6s, low 7s, and he's just always somebody hard to get to as a second option on his team. 63 is really easy to get to. And then Tyreek Hill, obviously, he's the second most expensive receiver on the slate, but he's easy to get to, especially if you're going to go with the Tua build. I would not do a double without Tyreek Hill. I would pick Tyreek and one other guy. Both running backs, kind of similar prices.
Right.
I guess you could probably consider both of them as reasonable doubles. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe more so HN.
In tournaments, for sure.
In tournaments, for sure. And then Johnny Smith, who has turned heads, because he just, for some reason, always gets touches, despite, kind of bouncing around where he has the last couple of years. He's 3,500. He's getting into rounds as a tight end. He's probably the one cheap guy that you can go to and feel good about. So entering him as a second piece as well makes sense.
Right. He's probably Johnny Smith, probably the cheapest guy I'm going to get to if I'm going to do tight ends. I don't think that there's very many solid tight ends low, and I like the expensive ones. But two is pretty easy. Get two of his guys. Tyreek Hill for sure. The next guy is Kyler Murray. Where are you at, buddy? He's too short. I can't see him. There he is. Sorry. Kyler, missed some games last year. And it really put a damper on the Arizona season, but he's back. He has more receiving help in Marvin Harrison Jr. and another year under Trey McBride's belt. And Michael Wilson's coming on. Greg Dortch looks somewhat good in camp. So Kyler actually has a lot of upside, and I'm really excited. He is my favorite quarterback on the slate.
And what's fun is I don't think anybody else is feeling the same way.
I'm glad.
I think a lot of people want to get this game some way, shape, or form. But the problem is with Arizona, their pass catching, at least, James Conner is kind of reasonable compared to what he has been. But Marvin Harrison Jr., his debut as a rookie in the NFL, he's 7,200. We have never seen that before. It's going to be really hard to get to. Trey McBride, we love him. He has a lot of upside. He was a top 5 tight end prioritized for us. He is on my fantasy team in our big league.
Right.
He's the highest, most expensive tight end, the only one over 6,000 on this slate. It's really hard to get both, let alone get one. And so typically when guys know what they're doing and they do double stacks, they typically get two of the best pass catchers and go from there. It's really hard to get one of those. So typically, if you're going to do a Kyler stack double, getting one of them and going to Michael Wilson, who's 43, which is kind of more expensive than I even thought he would be. But I don't think many people are even looking at him. If you look at props on PrizePicks and Underdog, it's at 30.5.
He is the number 3 option.
Averages 15 yards of reception, and he's got 30.5. So nobody's really on him. So he's an excellent tournament play as well. Very, very fun way to go if you're going to be going into a positive game environment like Buffalo, if it is indeed fair weather like we think it will be. Right.
And another thing, Kyler has a floor because he has a rushing upside, which, he doesn't necessarily score touchdowns. He needs to handle the ball a little bit better. But, 33 yards on rushing is 3.3 points. And that's a really solid floor because you're not going to get that from every quarterback. So I like that. He also has the upside of throwing 35 times this game, especially if they're down. He's going to be throwing more. We love attacking quarterbacks that we think are going to be losing games because that means they're going to be chunking the ball. So yeah, I'm excited about Kyler. I know Cam is a little bit too, and we're definitely excited about Arizona Buffalo. But the next guy on our list is going to be, the other side of the Miami Jacksonville game. It's kind of becoming a trend.
It is.
But that's how it'll be. That's how it should be. Trevor Lawrence, a guy that kind of disappointed in the year last year, and he's 6,200 because of it. And we have the opportunity to get him with multiple pass catchers because they are so cheap. You get Christian Kirk at 5,500, Brian Thomas at 47, and Gabe Davis at 45.
Yep.
Plus, you have the tight end option with Evan Ingram at 5,500. Evan Ingram did catch 2 touchdowns in his final preseason game, in the only game he played. They are finally targeting him in the red zone. So that makes this a very interesting guy and probably a very big tournament play because I don't think anybody's going to have him.
Yeah, once again, we're looking at first looks and seeing who people are kind of on to see some trends. Nobody's mentioned him. I saw one of the guys that we do follow. He listed like 7 quarterbacks, and Trevor Lawrence wasn't on there. And this is the highest total on the entire slate at 49.5. You can't. That's malpractice. You have to mention them, especially if they have value pass catchers that you don't have to spend more than 5,500 for anybody as a pass catcher. Sign me up.
And also, when we create our lineups, we'll show y'all, but we like bring back players from the team they're playing. Tyreek Hill is like the perfect guy in this situation. And if you don't think Tyreek Hill is going to score the touchdowns, Achane is another guy you can be like, or Waddle, or there are so many options for bring back players in this game. And you get the stack plus the bring back player for much cheaper than you're going to get for Buffalo, Arizona.
Yeah, and we haven't even mentioned Travis Etienne, but he is 7,200. He's one of the most, I guess, of all the running backs that are kind of more over $7,000. We're not really going that direction. He's the one exception this year.
Yes.
Also, he gets 4 to 5 targets a game.
Yeah.
So he's worth mentioning at least. If you want to do a double, you're going to get even more weird there. But if you want to go triple, I don't even care. Just go for it.
In my personal opinion, Travis Etienne has more receptions and more targets than Gabe Davis does this year. Yeah. So if that tells you anything about how we are on Travis Etienne, we're very excited about him, but you need the upside in the passing game as a running back, and he has it. And a very cool way to have ownership differences is just by saying, hey, I'm going to get the quarterback and I'm going to take his running back, and hopefully he gets 5 targets. And that's because he's going to get the rushing upside. So getting those targets will be very big.
And then, I mean, we talk about, like, this is kind of wishful thinking because Trevor Lawrence obviously coming off a down year. He still hasn't shown consistency to just be a quarterback one in terms of fantasy week in and week out. Well, he had 1 game of action, and I know it's against backups. It doesn't matter. He had 2 drives, 8 for 10, 92 yards, 2 touchdowns, both to Evan Ingram. Brian Thomas also caught a 40-yarder. Christian Kirk didn't even play, but he's going to get like 8 targets a game.
Right.
And then Travis Etienne, very efficient, 7 for 46, and then he also caught a passing touchdown in the first preseason game from Trevor Lawrence. So we really have a good feeling that he's going to finally break out this year as a reliable fantasy threat. And, this is a perfect game environment to start off that trend.
Yeah, you have to take the advantages of week 1, basically, because we don't know anything about Brian Thomas. We don't know anything about this new offense and how they're going to play together, jive. But you take this, say they do really well, you're going to be very happy if you stack this game or this team. And then we have one more guy on this list. Let me go find him. He is he's our lowest comfortable guy, I guess, right? That's kind of how I put it. It's Jaden Daniels, has no stats. He did not play last year. He was at LSU, but at LSU, he had over 1,100 rushing yards, and that gives him the most amazing floor. In his first preseason or second preseason game, he scored a rushing touchdown, giving him that upside. That is something that you can't take away because he is going to throw the ball 30 times, most likely. But he also has the chance of going for 100 yards. We talked about it with Justin Fields a lot last year. Jaden Daniels is a better football player than Justin Fields. And we have this upside on top of that. And then stacking a guy like this that rushes so much, you don't always have to put 2 guys out there. You don't have to double stack a guy like this. You can just say, hey, Terry, you'll be the guy all day. But and we'll just only play you. It'll be Jaden and Terry, and then whoever you want for Tampa Bay. It's a very good game to get to, high total, and it's a fun game on the slate.
He's essentially what everybody wants you to believe that Anthony Richardson is.
He has all the upside. Actually had good accuracy in college. For crazy.
He has all the upside as a rusher. He had 1,000 yards last year, 10 touchdowns rushing. Yes. But he also can throw for 300 yards a game if he needs to, and if he has weapons around him. Problem is, they trade away Jahan Dotson, don't really bring anybody back, in this preseason acquisition period. And so really it's other than, I guess, Noah Brown, which wait and see, maybe he's a value. De'Ami Brown, former second-round pick that could maybe finally have opportunity. Who knows?
Both 3,000.
Regardless, their minimum price. Terry McLaurin going to be one of the most popular receivers on the slate because he is by default the number 1, number 2, and number 3 on that offense. Yeah. And he's 5,600. So you're telling me you can get Jaden Daniels and his wide receiver 1 for less than $12,000. Sign me up.
Absolutely.
And so the typically the thing is you want to do double stacks. You want to do that. But when you have guys with high rushing upside or just they're going to pepper somebody with 12 targets and then everybody else is just going to get 3.
Right.
Jaden Daniels is one of those exceptions that you could probably get away with just being a single stack with Terry McLaurin, but maybe getting different and double bring back because Chris Godwin's cheap. Mike Evans in a good matchup. Cade Otton's cheap. You got Rashad White that we talked about has a good matchup as well. Washington gave up so much last year, and even though they'll be improved, we don't know if they have the talent around them enough yet to just all of a sudden be a top half of the league defense.
Right, absolutely. And we watched their cornerbacks get burnt a lot during this preseason. I know that their front 7 got a lot better, but their DBs still need some help. So I do love that take. Do you want to shout out anybody under Jaden Daniels?
So it's kind of tough. You got to look at Sam Darnold as one because the Giants secondary has been absolutely god awful. They might be the absolutely worst secondary in the NFL.
And they got rid of
Actually,
their
they're
best
the
player.
second worst according to PFF. Yeah,
And
exactly.
yeah,
And so Sam Darnold, again, Addison actually still has props up, so it makes it seem like he could maybe even play week 1. But we know T.J. Hawkinson won't, and we know that Aaron Jones, even though he's a popular guy to potentially outperform his ADP this year,
right.
it might not consistently be there. And maybe in week 1, there's a little bit of a wait and see approach. Who knows? But they're also on the road. So maybe the Giants don't realize they're bad yet. And this is the one win that they're going to actually possibly have because it's basically an even spread.
Right.
Very interesting. 5,200. I know Justin Jefferson's one of the most expensive players, but it's really easy to get to him. Jalen Naylor is 3,000 minimum price. Yeah. And again, Jordan Addison, even if he does play and you believe that he'll be healthy, and he's 5,300.
And then
very cheap.
Another guy that we hadn't really talked about is Johnny Munt. He's a guy that they're only tight end, basically.
You want to go puke tight end.
Yeah, you want to go gross tight end. Yeah.
Once again, he was very serviceable last year when T.J. Hawkinson went down. If my phone will load,
grab it real quick.
Yeah,
I can pull it up.
No,
too.
You're good. Perfect. So in the 2-game sample size that he had 6 targets, 7 targets. He had 5 for 58, 4 for 39, and touchdown.
And that was without Kirk Cousins.
That was Nick Mullins. So Sam Darnold is no Nick Mullins, even if you don't believe in him,
right?
And his opportunity to finally, become something in the NFL as a starter. But yeah, you get over 10 points a game for each game. He's under 29, or he is 2,900.
Right.
So very easy to get to him if you wanted to add him as a second piece as well. And then the Giants, all their skill players are cheap because they're all bad other than Malik Neighbors.
Yeah, I would just take Malik Neighbors and be happy if you're going to go that route. And then we'll go through the running backs. Of course, we've already talked about some of them, but there are some that I definitely want to highlight that we haven't gone over. Travis Etienne, of course, is the first guy. We said anybody over 7,000, it's him. He's our only guy that we really like. The next guy on the list would be Achane. Achane is going to have the tournament winning upside that you want to see. He had a 54.3 fantasy game last year as a backup when they scored 70 points. Holy crap.
And then followed it up with a 30-point and a 25, and then he got hurt, but then he came right back and got 25 as a rookie, part-time work. Well, now he should be the 1A.
Right.
And, he's been healthy, knock on wood, through camp. He actually lined out as a receiver in the preseason on a couple of occasions. I don't know if that was because of roster depletions.
Jalen Waddle too being injured.
Jalen Waddle was out. OBJ hasn't participated for mysterious reasons. Who knows? But he has that kind of upside as well. It's PPR league.
Yeah.
Sign us up for that. Especially, he's a very, very interesting bring back if you are going to go the Jacksonville route.
Absolutely. And then looking at the next guy, where is he? We talked about Rachaad White a little bit. We're going to get a little bit of him just because we do like the Washington-Tampa Bay environment. Washington's not good on defense, and Rachaad White is volume king. He might not be good at football, but he is going to get all the work.
Right.
So you got to at least mention him. You can look at these targets 5, 3, 4, 4, 7. He's just going to get that volume, and he did have over 1,000 rushing yards last year. I'm sorry. Kenneth Walker. Oh, yeah, of course. Can't forget about that guy. That guy is in a game environment that we actually like also.
Yeah, I mean, you want to talk about the game that we saw HN score 54 and then Raheem Mostert also score 45, and they scored 8 touchdowns together? Well, that was against Denver, and Denver is playing Kenneth Walker. Seattle. Our boy Al Smizzle. We love him. And, we hope he gets back into content if he kind of gets that spark again. But shouting him out again. Something that he used to preach, 5 box running backs. Usually that means guys that are favored, guys with 20 plus upside, upside, touchdown upside. Can they contribute in the passing game? That's what Kenneth Walker is going to be this year. He's going to be the workhorse back. Finally, he's going to break out in their new regime. He's 6,100, far too cheap. This might be the cheapest you'll see him all season. And it's a great environment. It's a sneaky game that we might be talking about shortly about doing a little bit of a small stack,
right?
Bring back stack. And he's a guy that we're going to prioritize in those.
Yeah,
builds.
One of our secondary stacks. He is also at home. That's another one of the 5 boxes.
That I was like, I was at 4, but
that's the other 5 box that Cam forgot. But yeah, and if you look, I mean, he has upside. These are very consistent numbers. He gets injured. Zach Charbonnet is not him, just so everybody knows. comes back against Washington, but like he's just fighting injury last year, so hopefully he stays healthy.
And it's also a frustrating, regime of just they used to since Marshawn Lynch, they just kind of went by committee and didn't really give him the reins. And
Right.
he comes with a offense coordinator that comes from Washington that just kind of prioritize, hey, I got one guy and I'm gonna let it ride.
Right.
He is talented enough to be that one guy.
Yeah.
And he has been getting nonstop praise this summer.
Grubb got Dylan Johnson from Washington into the NFL because he is already cut from his team.
Yes.
He is not good at football, but what happened was he got the volume, and that's all that matters sometimes. And in an offense where you have to worry about 3 other receivers, that's another thing. That's the same similar as he had in Washington. Seattle has 3 receivers that are pretty good at football, so should open the field up a little bit for Kenneth Walker. The next guy on our list here is Javonte Williams. 5,500. Oh, down.
Yeah, the same.
Wow,
same.
too cheap. Look, I have to go find him.
Yep. So again, a lot of people were off of him. He was the pre-training camp. Oh, he could be fighting for a roster spot. Hoopla that beat reporters and people that say they have sources want you to believe, and it not even close to resembled that.
Yeah.
The first practice, he got every look with the ones. He looked great in preseason. The only thing is,
he's him.
Jaleel McLaughlin is giving some touches as well. But guess what? Running backs aren't what they used to be, where you just get somebody 80% of the snaps plus, and they just get all the touches. It's basically 60-40 split between starter and reserves.
Right.
In every backfield almost. Well, if Javonte's going to get 60%,
very happy.
Sean Payton every year for the last 10 plus years has had top 5 production from the running back position in terms of targets. Last year they were number 1. It just got evenly split between Samaje Perine and Jaleel McLaughlin. But guess what? They combined for 229 fantasy points, which would have been a RB2, high level RB2 in fantasy last year if it was just one person.
Right.
Well, now
absolutely.
Samaje Perine is no longer on the team. Audric Estime, we like him as a handcuff, as a future, but early on, especially, he is not going to eat into either guy's workload. Javonte and Jaleel are going to be manhandling this backfield, and their receiving core is very, very weak in terms of talent. So it's really just the Courtland Sutton show, the Greg Dulcich, if he gets back to what his 3-game sample size as a rookie was, and then those 2 guys who are both scat backs, both can get goal line touches, all that stuff. And again, positive game environment. 5,500. Seattle had the second most points allowed to fantasy points allowed to running backs last year, and they lost some of their best defenders, especially Bobby Wagner, most notably. So, yeah, we love Javonte Williams this year and this week as well.
For sure. And I brought this screen up so you could see that they were ranked 31st in yards per game against the run last year, and then also 30th for just overall yards. Javonte should have a big week, and we're excited about getting to him as much as possible. A guy that I'm not necessarily getting to, but is very popular, is Jerome Ford.
For good reason.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nick Chubb is on the pup. They basically have him and Pierre Strong as their only running backs because they cut Deontay Foreman, then signed him back to the practice squad. He may be active for the game, but it's clear that they're just saying this is a 2-man backfield, and Cleveland's one of the few teams that has actually prioritized giving a heavy amount of dosage to their running backs. Jerome Ford took it and ran with it last year. He was an RB2, a very safe RB2 last year once Nick Chubb went down. In the very game that Nick Chubb went down and he missed a quarter of action in terms of what he would have had if he had the full game script, still had 100 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Yep.
So tough thing is Dallas, reasonable defense. I actually have no idea how this game is going to play out. I would stay far away from it in terms of betting spread, points, the team to win. It doesn't matter. Cleveland's actually favored though. And so he does qualify for being a 5-box running back now that we know all 5 of the things.
Right, of course.
He's got 20 touch upside, very safe. I don't know if we're going to get to him just because there are so many more value guys that we haven't even brought up yet. But he is somebody worth mentioning because I anticipate he'll be one of the 10 highest owned running backs.
And I like getting away from his ownership, which is another thing that we kind of talk about.
If he was a 4%er,
oh yeah, we're all over him. Yes.
But I anticipate he'll be flirting with 15 to 20% ownership.
Exactly.
So with that being said, I'm going to prioritize somebody like we'll get to him right next. Who should be getting stuff in a reserve, and that's Chuba Hubbard.
Yep.
He goes in and he was RB2 once. He got the opportunity last year to end the season. He was basically the workhorse back. He was getting 20 touches a game. If you look at his attempts, like that's kind of how you see it.
Right.
He had an injury scared in preseason. He's been practicing fully in the last week or so. And, it's really just kind of him and I guess Miles Sanders. But Miles Sanders, I've heard nothing about. But, I mean, consistently, look, 11, 11, 12, 12. He had some 25s in there. He had a 20 in there. 8 was his floor, and he's 5,300.
Yep. I think that's another thing to mention is like you get this with no touchdowns, except in 1 touchdown in 5 games, and you get that floor of 12, which is really, really good to see. He does also get targets, not necessarily high volume targets, but like floor amount of targets, say three a game, which is really good to see too.
And what's fun about it is like everybody's going to look at the numbers, which don't pay attention. It's not end all be all. It's just maybe like a little bit of a tiebreaker in terms of what teams allowed last year, because a lot of these teams and situations, there was injuries. Teams have had acquisitions, departures, whatever, coaching changes, doesn't matter. So it's not end all be all. But everybody's going to look at Carolina. Oh, they're dogs. Oh, they're on the road. Oh, New Orleans was 9th against running backs. Well, guess what? They got worse on defense, and they, to end the year, were bottom 10 in terms of yards allowed a game to the running backs. So it just kind of seems like a very, very good sneaky play. And then also, we're going to mention it later, but defenses, you typically want to go with cheap ones. Carolina's their favorite defense.
One of the things too is what Cam's getting at is sometimes when you don't do a perfect correlated line, a good way to add correlation is to add a running back and their defense. Because when you do that, think about it. If you're running clock, if you're winning and you're running that clock, that other team is not getting the ball. You're running the ball with your running back. Your defense is not on the field. They're not getting scored on. We love all of those things when you want to do that correlation wise. The next guy on the list is only $100 less. Where are you? See, and it's becoming a trend, guys. Like this got let out a long time ago, and we found the guys that slowly trickled into these positions. Obviously, Chuba Hubbard's not more expensive because we didn't know about Jonathan Brooks. Jerome Ford, not too expensive because we didn't know about Nick Chubb. Javonte Williams, bad reports, 5,500. So now we're getting the value on them because of that. But the next guy.
Yeah, Brian Robinson, another guy in a positive game environment. We talked about, Washington, Tampa Bay. It's going to be the unsexy, but really there's not many pieces of this game I don't want.
Right.
And 5,200 for a starting running back, I guess he's a 1A, but he has pass catching upside as well. He's just very safe to me. His props actually don't make sense. His rushing yards prop is 42 yards. And I know Tampa was good against the run. That's their kind of strength of their defense still. That's still too low.
Yeah.
Again, we would be prioritizing him a lot more if there weren't other, in better matchups.
Yeah.
But he's somebody that we need to mention because 5,200 for a starting running back could get 15 touches and 4 targets. It's somebody that you got to mention, especially like we said, it's Terry McLaurin and nothing else.
Right. Exactly.
So like those targets got to go somewhere. Jaden Daniels isn't going to throw 15 times. He's going to throw about 25 to 30. So who's going to get the 4 targets here, 3 targets here, 3 targets here? Brian Robinson should inherit a couple at least.
Yeah, and then also with him, it's really easy to bring back on the other side with Tampa Bay. We talked about that with Jaden Daniels. Like you could go Mike Williams in this game. You can go Chris Godwin in this game. You could make a case to go double running back in this game, which I personally don't like doing. But if you said Rachaad White is, going to catch balls too, fine. So you have a lot of options with him, which is great. The last guy on this list is Chase Brown.
Yeah, and this was just straight up a benefit of these prices came out. Usually they always kind of come out week 1 a couple weeks prior, but I feel like this came out even earlier this year.
So early.
And this was the perfect guy that epitomizes why if you come out early, like somebody's going to reap those rewards. And Chase Brown, the highest or biggest favorite on the entire slate is Cincinnati against New England. I believe it's pumped up to -9 now.
Oh, I thought it was sorry. No. I thought it was almost 2 touchdowns.
No, you're good. But one, it's an ugly game environment because it's the lowest total on the slate at 40.
Yeah.
But that's mostly because of New England. It's not because of Cincinnati. Cincinnati, Joe Burrow's back. They should be flirting with 21 to 25 points. New England, their defense used to be their strength, and it's just kind of coming into bits and pieces. And their secondary is still good, though. But Chase Brown now is the 1A. He started out getting most of the rest with the ones. The problem with Chase Brown is just straight up Zach Moss is the type of profile that just doesn't touch the ball at all until you get down to the one, and then he punches it in for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so all the Chase Brown reps that led to that spot, and then he doesn't reap the reward. A little bit of a higher risk in that regard. I think Chase Brown, because he's the biggest favorite, starting at home as a running back as a 1A, he'll be kind of more popular than maybe we even think. So it's kind of one that I kind of want to keep an eye on in terms of ownership and vibes of what other people think his ownership will be. Because if he is one of the chalkiest plays on the slate, which he deserves to be, maybe it's something that it's like, I remember Chase Edmonds a couple years ago where we hyped him up as like, oh, he's getting the 1 reps. He just got paid for Miami. And then he scored twice in week 1, but he was like 30% owned.
Right.
He had like 9 carries for 17 yards, but he scored twice. And then all of a sudden he gets cut.
Yes.
5 weeks later. Chase Brown, we think he's better than that, and he will actually keep a role. But maybe, the hype of him getting all the reps with the ones, maybe it just only leads to 12 touches, and he's more touchdown dependent than we want him to be. And that's kind of what puts a little bit more risk in my eyes.
Well, yeah, and I also think Zach Moss is actually more of a fit for the style of game that we're going to see here.
Exactly.
Because Chase Brown is truly a scat back. I mean, he isn't the biggest guy in the world. He's the pass catching back in this offense that just happens to start. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like a James Cook to a Ray Davis, but like at a much closer ability level. So I think that makes this interesting.
And one more thing, if you want to know about how the public has turned in the favor of Chase Brown and how people acknowledge that he is the starter, Zach Moss, when his first rushing yard prop for week 1 came out, it was 65.
Mm-hmm.
It's now below 50.
Yep.
So they know that it's going to be Chase Brown. Chase Brown actually doesn't have a yardage prop yet still, which was interesting. But I just think that it's a guy that looks great on paper, and I wonder if it's going to turn out exactly in our head as we think. But everybody else, if you're thinking the same way, just because you believe something will happen doesn't mean you should just go all in for something.
For sure.
Especially, we mentioned like 7 running backs below 6,000. You don't have to put every line with Chase Brown.
Mm-hmm.
And one more guy that, we're not even going to mention, but he's the backup and he's a 1B to Javonte Williams, Jaleel McLaughlin. If you're a supporter of him, he is 4,300.
Go ahead.
And Denver's going to trail. So pass catching work against a good team, or a good a team that gave up a lot of yardage to running backs last year. So another guy worth mentioning in a better environment. So all these guys here, just kind of pick and choose, maybe sprinkle a little of all of them if you're going to do multi-lines.
Right. Absolutely. Then we'll just check out the wide receiver position. It should go by pretty quick because we've mentioned almost all these guys that we like. Just for disclaimer, the top 5 guys on any given slate can break the slate because they are so good at football. So we are not going to talk about CeeDee Lamb against Cleveland because Cleveland has a good defense and he's not really in the best situation compared to these other guys. If CeeDee Lamb gets 15 targets and scores a couple touchdowns, he will break the slate. That is what it is. And that's how these guys, because these guys are so good at football, you don't necessarily just know which one is going to do it that week. But there are certain teams, Tyreek Hill, we really like him in this environment, 22nd versus 3rd. Big difference. And, Tyreek Hill could be the guy that breaks the slate. And we're going to try to we're trying to pick and choose the guys we think can do that.
And it's also going to be interesting to see ownership this week because so much value on both running back and receiver that you could really get 2 of these 5. And very rarely are you able to double stack. And they're not really stacked, but just get 2 of these elite guys and then construct your line around that. But you can get Tyreek and Justin Jefferson if you really want to.
So crazy.
And it can work, and it won't be a weird lineup.
Right.
So you can go Jaden Daniels and the Tampa Bay, Washington cheap guys, and then just double them, and then find somebody for Jacksonville that's cheap, and find somebody for New York that's cheap.
Right.
It's really easy to get to those guys. So ownership's going to be high. Usually what you want to do with these higher guys is who's somebody that can profile as the wide receiver 1 for the week that's the least looked at.
Yes.
And one of those guys that we haven't even mentioned, Devontae Adams. Positive game environment. LAC has a very bad secondary, especially at corner. And the problem is he's got that Q tag. And he hasn't practiced for a while. And something's tweaked. And, he's unhappy. And a lot of people probably aren't going to gravitate towards him because of that. And he's 76, so he's not really a value.
Yeah.
So, but he is still capable if he's active and healthy and he's practicing all week. that he can go 10 for 150 and 2 touchdowns,
Yeah.
just like the guys above him. And he's probably going to be the least owned. So that's a very interesting guy worth keeping an eye on.
For tournaments, for sure. I completely agree with that. Looking at these guys, the most exposed we're going to have are these three here. Tyreek Hill in the Jacksonville versus Miami game, we already talked about, could break the slate. He could have 200 yards. Justin Jefferson, we talked about when we talked about Sam Darnold, he will just absolutely torch the Giants. That is what it is. Sam Darnold's just got to get him the ball. And I think you said that he is your favorite pay up option in this range.
Yep.
So absolutely great play. Jamar Chase, I'm more on the Jamar Chase side, but he has not practiced, so we will have to monitor. If he does play, Jamar Chase could go for 3 touchdowns in this game and no one should be surprised by that.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, and again, because of his contract being unsettled and
Right.
not getting any training camp and practice, essentially, maybe he's a little lower owned than even I anticipate, which I think he won't even flirt with being half the ownership of what Tyreek and Justin Jefferson and maybe even CeeDee Lamb do.
Right.
And then a couple other guys in the 7K range. Mike Evans, fantastic game environment.
Right.
If you're doing, stacks with Washington, Tampa Bay, it doesn't matter. He should be at least worth a look. Marvin Harrison, pure tournament play, but in the highest total, or one of the 2 highest totals. We love that game environment. We just talked about Kyler Murray, how it's hard. It's going to be a low owned double if you're going to include him.
Yep. And then the next guy on our list will be a game that we haven't really talked about in Tennessee and Chicago. That is DJ Moore. Keenan Allen, who is the cheaper guy on everything by far, is actually priced $400 more expensive with the Q tag. I'm surprised by that. I know these came out really early, and I thought everybody was on the DJ Moore train, but for some reason, this slate, DraftKings was like, nope.
Yeah, Keenan Allen is essentially going to have no ownership.
Right.
And he's somebody that we had basically was our most exposed guy in the first 8 rounds of any draft player in best ball. But we're not playing him this week.
Insane tournament play.
Exactly.
You would have that's a 5 under 5.
Yeah, that is definitely a 3 under 3.
Yeah, I mean,
it's that low. But DJ Moore, very safe. The thing with Tennessee, they completely revamped their secondary, so that's why you kind of have to take all these numbers with a grain of salt. They basically have 3 new starters on that side of the ball
right.
in the secondary. So it's probably one of the better secondaries in the NFL. I believe PFF. Let's see.
Top 10 for sure.
Well, they have him 15, so I think that's even a little lower. But getting L'Jarius Sneed, W. Wuzier.
Yeah.
I just think that it's not just he would be more of a priority if I didn't look at all those additions and be like, okay, kind of wait and see approach. And then on top of that, he's in a 3-headed monster of receivers. So sometimes he's been a guy that doesn't get 10 targets, but he just catches all 6 of his targets and for 100 yards and a touchdown. That's the style of receiver that he is. He's not a high volume target guy compared to Keenan Allen, who we've seen get 15 targets and he'll catch 8.
Yeah.
But that's how he gets his money. So very worth keeping a look. He's probably one of the best wide receiver 1 options to do of all the games that are the highest scoring in terms of over-unders. So, yeah, we would need to mention him for
big-time upside type of guy. If he does get those big games, he's got 30-point, 50-point upside. But that was without Keenan Allen and Rome. Those guys probably bring down his target share just a tad bit, but he does get a better quarterback than Justin Fields this year. The next guy that we're going to look at is, where's DK? We want to talk about DK because he's in that Seattle-Denver game. DK could end up with 2 touchdowns, and no one should be surprised by that. So having him on our player list is, always a thing. He does have a really solid floor most of the time because they do just try to force him the ball at times. With that being said, I'm more comfortable with other Seattle players than DK, but he's got to be on this list based on the fact that we talked about Denver so much.
Right.
So, and then going down to, if you do want to get some of that Tennessee-Chicago game, I think the best option to bring back is Calvin Ridley. Because with Calvin Ridley, he's healthy, first off. That's always good. You don't know what's going to happen in the backfield. And Calvin Ridley should have the highest target share of all the guys that are, consistently playing.
Even though it's optimistic that DeAndre Hopkins will be there and he sounds like he will be playing, you don't know how limited he'll be.
Right.
Calvin Ridley for 5,800 is pretty good value.
Yeah. The next guy that I know we've already talked about is Terry McLaurin. He's right here.
He's going to be one of the highest owned guys on the slate. But sometimes there's necessary chalk, and football especially, you can get very different with some of the two. You can play the 2 chalkiest plays in the entire slate and then get like 5 other guys that are less than 10% owned, and nobody dupes your
Right,
team.
exactly.
So I'm never afraid of doing that. Maybe I'll be underweight, and if I'm building 5 lines and I know he's going to be 30% owned, maybe I'll just do 1 out of 5.
Right.
But still, even if you went 40 or 60% owned, like there's ways to get different if he doesn't pan out. Is what it is. Not all of this chalk will usually pan out. But yeah, there's no reason to not love Terry McLaurin this week.
Yep. The next guy, if you wanted, okay, so we'll just mention him really quick. Cortland Sutton, he is the number 1 on the Denver offense. They don't really have anybody else. So if you are playing the Seattle game and you want to be different than Javonte, you can go Cortland Sutton. But he is just a quick mention, nothing special. He might get you the touchdown, and that would really change everything for you. Christian Kirk, because we do have the Jacksonville game and Miami circled. He's a guy that you really, he could have 10 targets, no problem. A little nerve-wracking when he's playing out of the slot and not getting into receiver sets, but still, he's probably still going to have 8 to 10 targets and has the upside to catch some touchdowns. But one thing is, that is a problem for him. His touchdowns are not there right now, and he doesn't get the red zone threats. So 3 touchdowns last year. I feel like you have to have a touchdown out of him if you want him on your line.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he's kind of becoming a sneaky tournament play, honestly, because of the fact that he really hasn't practiced for a couple weeks due to injury, and then also when he did play, he didn't play in 3 receiver sets, so he didn't get the snaps. And again, highest total on the slate. You just want pieces of it. He could be a guy that sneakily gets under 5% for whatever reason.
Right. And then looking at the next guy, we have the trio of Buffalo players. I'm not going to pull up Khalil Shakur because we're not on him in any way, shape, or form. Keon Coleman, though, is a little bit more interesting as a rookie. He has jump ball upside and stuff like that in the red zone. He's probably, him and Dalton Kincaid are the main red zone threats in this offense. So I think he becomes interesting. And then right under him, we have a $4,900 Curtis Samuel, which is super interesting with the Q tag and everything. But if Curtis Samuel is on the field at $4,900, he is the best option for Buffalo, in my opinion.
So here's the thing. Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, Curtis Samuel, all separated by just $200.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I can tell you, because I have no idea who's going to pan out this week, I can tell you Khalil Shakir is probably going to be the highest owned guy. And it's uncomfortable, and it's probably somebody that I would least expose to compared to everybody else if I know that he's going to be the highest owned guy.
Right.
I think if people are going to be going heavy at rookie receiver, Brian Thomas Jr. is a great value. And on top of that, he looked great. And then you look at Malik Neighbors, highlight reel after highlight reel.
Mm-hmm.
Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't think Keon Coleman is going to rival that ownership with those guys. Maybe he will. Maybe I'm wrong. But I think Khalil Shakir, based on how much his ADP shot up to end best ball season, because it not only went up 2 rounds, but it flipped by a full round separation between him and Curtis Samuel. Typically, those kinds of trends, like you're putting context clues together and you're going to know who's going to be the highest owned. I just don't think he deserves to be. Maybe he gets that 3 for 41 and a score, but that's just kind of how I view this game is like pick whoever you want, but I just know one of the guys is going to be the highest owned, and if he has a higher risk, maybe that's somebody that you want to be getting away from.
Right. And then we have a bunch of really cheap guys that we're going to talk about. First one, Brian Thomas Jr. played in all the 2 receiver sets. Will be in this big game environment between Jacksonville and Miami, highest game on the slate. I really like him as a more than just a tournament play. I think that he is considered a tournament play, but I like him more than that. And then Michael Wilson is in the Arizona Buffalo game. We're just attacking these games. We love these game environments. For Michael Wilson, he is the number 2 receiver, wide receiver 2, and he is 4,300 for Kyler Murray right now.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it's too cheap, and we both circled that one early.
Oh yeah,
so
absolutely, we love him this week, and getting that game, you just need to find a way to get that game. Please, that's the only thing I recommend.
And then at $4,000, we have Rome. Where is he? There he is. Rome Odunze. He is just too cheap for his role in the Chicago offense. I mean, we know where the ball's going. There's 3 players. We know that they're going to those 3 guys, and Rome will probably have the least of the target share. But the difference in price, the ability to get him at 4,000, and if you don't like Tennessee, you can still get him as a single guy that you really like. He makes a lot of room for your lineup. I mean, he's just a guy we really like this week too.
Yeah, and then also I didn't mention him when I was talking about receivers. Forgot about him because we haven't talked about him yet, and it's a game that we just didn't mention of the Big Five, but he's probably going to be the most popular because everybody knows him, and he was absurdly too cheap when he came out. I still am doing wait and see, but you got to put him in the player pool at $4,000. I don't care
so
what his
low.
snap count is going to be.
Yep, and then Jalen Tolbert is in the one of the games we haven't really talked about that much in Dallas versus at Cleveland. But Jalen Tolbert is most likely, I don't know, he's flirting with wide receiver 2. He's like wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, him and Brandon Cooks. But at 3,400, he doesn't have to do much to be really good for you. And that's why we have him on this list. All of these guys obviously are in the same boat, but we see him being one of the guys that can actually pull out a solid stat line with 4 targets.
Right.
The next guy is Jalen McMillan. I like him in the Tampa Bay Washington game. I think he is the wide receiver 3 in that offense, which gives me a lot more hope that he's going to get the targets similar to Jalen Tolbert. And he's another guy that can explode when he catches the ball and take off and score touchdowns. So that's big.
Yeah. He killed it in preseason.
Yeah.
He rose a ton. We were early on him as well as a call, but if he's in 3 receiver sets and he's in a positive game environment, I don't know how consistent his targets will be early on, but we know that Chris Godwin's not been a red zone threat, especially with Baker Mayfield. He hasn't had 4 touchdowns in the last 2 years.
Right.
Mike Evans, obviously, it's him. He's that guy. But next to that, Cade Otton is not somebody that people prioritize. And then you got, Rashad White as well.
Right.
So,
of course, I forget about the running back.
I think it's very, very interesting and worth a look for sure.
Solid dart throws. And the last 3 dart throws, I'll just get them all out. De'Ami Brown and Noah Brown, both for the Washington Commanders. One of them will be wide receiver 2. We don't know who yet. Taking a dart throw on them is interesting for sure. And then Andre Iosivas playing for the Cincinnati Bengals. $3,000, all 3 of these guys. Andre Iosivas is going to run every route. Why not?
He's a priority play, especially if Jamar Chase doesn't play for some reason.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't anticipate that'll be the case, but if he doesn't and all he has is T. Higgins to work with, he's going to get 7 targets and he'll be very chalky. Eat the chalk. It's $3,000. Let's move on. Let's build an 8-man line at that point.
Yep. And then at tight end, you got, of course, some guys that we love. Trey McBride, we've talked about, and Dalton Kincaid, the 2 most expensive tight ends on the slate. Both of those guys are going to be in the best game environment. Get one of them, maybe both of them. We haven't really talked about doing double tight end, but it's a possibility on this slate because both of these guys are so good, and they're not that expensive compared to all these other receivers, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, usually 6,000 tight ends, it's like very special circumstance that you really have to prioritize getting those guys. But again, there's so much value because these prices went out so early. You can go any way which you want to go.
Yes.
If I'm going Josh Allen, I can get Dalton Kincaid and still have so much value elsewhere that it will make it work and not be an ugly build. That is going to be how one of us does our first build, and we'll be looking forward to showing that once we get to that point.
Yep. And then the next game, we still love Jacksonville, Miami. There's Evan Ingram. We talked about him earlier. He's a guy that we just kind of like getting to, especially at 5,500 if he is going to get the red zone targets.
Yeah, the biggest thing is he lacked efficiency, but he's PPR king.
Yep.
And then also he doesn't really, not much of a red zone threat. Trevor Lawrence, 2 touchdowns to him in the final preseason game in 2 drives. And it's like, if that's what we're looking for, and you're showing it to us, just don't follow the tea leaves, essentially.
Yep. And then a guy that is too cheap, in our opinion, 2 guys that are too cheap, but Kyle Pitts at 4,600. I know, guys, I know you're a little worried about him, but think about this. Kyle Pitts actually finally has his season. This is his season, and you're getting him for 4,600, which is $300 less than Dalton Schultz. I just think at 4,600, if you're going to build a lineup and you're like, hey, I need a tight end that's, going to get me 5 to 6 targets and possibly get a touchdown, have upside. This is a guy that in the middle of the range that just yells at you.
I think because of the way people can build lines this week, and then Taysom Hill is even cheaper and all that stuff. He's not a game environment that you're going to really look towards. I think it's the second lowest total in the entire slate. He's an interesting pivot.
Right.
as a tournament play because he has upside. It's just you have to speak it into existence because you haven't seen it on the field, and especially because this is the first game with Kirk Cousins off an injury and with Atlanta.
Right, absolutely. Brock Bowers is the other guy that we thought was a little bit too cheap. He's just going to do everything for this Las Vegas offense. And we talked a little bit about Devontae earlier. Well, Brock Bowers could have, funny enough, I think Brock Bowers could have 10 targets.
Yeah.
And that's just not even that surprising. And if he has 10 targets, he's obviously optimal in my opinion. He probably has a touchdown. He's going to be 6,000 next week, and just love the guy as a player. And I think the opportunities really present themselves here.
Yeah, so it's funny. Gardner Minshew is not one that's afraid to have 300 yards but 4 turnovers.
Yep.
So if you're going to have that kind of environment, that's how basically nobody won this job because of holding on to the ball. It's like who can push the ball down the field and make things happen. But yeah, we did double stacks last year when, like, for example, there was one game, 39-38, that he played with Indy against, I forget the name of the team, 300 yards, got that 3-point bonus. He had 2 touchdowns, 4 turnovers, but he still got 34 points.
Yeah.
So again, this isn't a game that we're really talking about, but it could be a sneaky game that like kind of scores more points than you think. And if you do, Brock Bowers debut, nobody's on him. Question tag once again. Sign us up. We love him, and you should too.
Yep, absolutely. And then 3,500, the last guy on this list that we're going to talk about is Jonnu Smith, Miami. Get you a second piece if you're going to go to a stacks. Jonnu is an easy piece to put in for 3,500 to keep your lineup. Just there's so many more players after that. One guy that I will mention because he's a little bit too cheap. Then we talked about him earlier, and I can't even find him. That's how cheap he is. Where is Kate Otten? Well, how much do you cost?
He's 38, I believe.
Oh, is he above?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought he was down lower. That's my bad. But Kate Otten is a guy we got to talk about a little bit. He is still too cheap at 38 just because of the game environment, the upside, and I think he could have a finally breakout year, which makes him interesting.
I've always liked him as a player, and
Tampa Bay just doesn't use him, right?
Yeah, sometimes he'll have the occasional game where he has the 8 targets and he'll make the most of it. He had a 2 touchdown game last year. He had the playoff game. He had 11 targets, 8 for 89. And then the following week, 5 for 65 and a score.
Yep.
So he has upside. He just isn't really getting that as a fantasy player, but he's worth mentioning for sure as well.
Yep. And then defensively, guys, just so everybody knows, I play defenses that are basically 3,000 or less, unless there's a injury to a quarterback most of the time. We talked about this a little bit before, but we don't like any of the defenses from 3,100 to 3,900 at all.
There will be special circumstances where, emergency quarterback or last minute injury, or Dorian Thompson-Robinson's playing somebody that's 3,200 and you just got to put him in. That's not this week. There's really nothing that sticks out. Maybe there's going to be a special teams defensive touchdown that you can never predict those things, that somebody scores 17 points and they're going to be 5% owned and cool, like do what you will. But nobody's going to start them for a specific reason. It's just going to be wishful thinking. You usually want to go cheap defense, and we have the perfect one for that.
Yep. So under 2,900, is kind of where I start looking. But the perfect defense that he's talking about is Carolina. We really like Carolina this week. I will actually put them in the line because they will be there no matter what. Carolina at New Orleans. We are down on New Orleans. We do not think the offense is good. There's issues with Alvin Kamara right now. Derek Carr has his own things going on. His mental is just shot, I feel like, and they have no O-line, and that's the biggest thing. They are last in O-line, and it's not even close, in my opinion. Like, they are, like, if there were 10 other teams, they'd still be like at the bottom, and 10 more teams added in the NFL, they'd be at the bottom. Their O-line is, I mean, it's really rough, man.
Yeah.
So
and then when you're going this cheap at defense, you just need 5 points to just be like, oh, I made it work. It's fine. And you were able to afford other things. If, because you're trying to do it to afford the next tier receiver or the star running back or the Josh Allen as a quarterback or the big tight end. You need to find ways to get cheap. And more often than not, when you go very cheap at defense, it's going to pay off more than it hurts.
Yes.
Very rarely you're going to see somebody, like, of course, if you got somebody missing 6 starters against Patrick Mahomes, you probably don't want to play him in 2,000, even if they're that cheap. But there's a lot of times that you're going to see somebody 2,200. Oh, they're a touchdown underdog, but then special teams touchdown. 5 sacks out of nowhere, 17 points. Last year there was like a 20-point defense we had, and they were 2,300, 3% owned, and we were confident. They were like in every line that we had. I forgot who it was, but like it's a type of game like this where Carolina can sneakily just take this game, or it could be an ugly game. And they have a good defense, whether you want to believe it or not. They were 2-15 and didn't allow 25 points a game.
Right.
And the only reason they allowed that much is because their offense literally could not move the ball. So it's like, we got to start at midfield again. And eventually, they're NFL players. You're eventually going to give up scores when you just have short fields every time. Carolina's going to be much better than you think week 1. On DraftKings, they're the only defense that we're going to play in. And when we build lineups in a second, they will be put in all 3 of them.
Right. So let's build lineups. Let's talk about how to build lineups, guys. So remember I said you should start with a quarterback, okay? So I'm going to start with my lineup. I'll build mine really slowly so we can go through this. Mine is going to be set up in the way that basically mine is going to be set up in the way for very new players to DFS and DraftKings can use this strategy. I'm going to make you make 4 decisions, and that's it. My first decision is quarterback, and I told you this is 4 positions. I'm going Kyler Murray, 100%. I'm very excited about Kyler this year, this game environment. It allows me to be different, which is fun because earlier we talked about it's hard to get Trey McBride and Marvin Harrison into a lineup. Well, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to go get
make it work.
I'm going to go get a guy that's going to be very underowned in Marvin Harrison. I believe, Trey McBride might be one of the highest owned tight ends, but he is in this line with Marvin Harrison, which we will not see nearly as much as we probably should. And then, remember I said you're making 3 decisions, or you're making 4 decisions. In this decision, you're getting 4 spots. I have to go find a player from the team they're playing that I think has upside and could score some points. That guy is going to be at the wide receiver position. I have 2 options. Me and Cam can debate it. You go Keon Coleman or you go Curtis Samuel. I'm personally going to go Keon Coleman in this lineup, but if you went Curtis Samuel, more than awesome. It's perfectly fine. You're just trying to find the best upside scorer for this Buffalo team, and I'm not going to pay up to Dalton Kincaid. I'm going to let Cam do that here in a minute. So this is my first picks, okay? So my first decision was Kyler, and then I made 3 picks because of Kyler, and it made it really easy. Now my next thing, we're going to do what's called a secondary stack. Basically, that's going to be, we're going to pick a game that we really want to get some of, and my game is going to be Denver versus Seattle. I'm going to go get the running back from Denver. There you are, Javonte Williams, and then I'm going to go get a guy from Seattle. And you see a trend here. We're trying to get games in big environments that allow us to score a lot of points. If Javonte Williams is playing really well, and Denver is scoring points, Seattle is probably also scoring points. It makes the total go up. It makes you throw the ball more. So we're going to go get the guy that's going to catch the ball for Seattle.
Right.
Which guy is that, Cameron? Which guy do you like?
I'm going to go with Jason.
Perfect. He is way too cheap, guys. $4,900. He is, first off, he's $500 cheaper than Tyler Lockett, who is a Q tag right now. And he's going to be sponsored. Like, he is going to be one of the guys that they are looking for in this line. Because just remember, they have a new offensive coordinator. And that guy loves targeting 3 receiver sets. And coming from Washington, that's our guy. Bam. All right. The last game that I want to get to in this build, you can do any game you want. I'm actually not picking the highest total games. I'm not going the Miami-Jacksonville game. The game that I'm going to go is the Washington versus Tampa Bay game. And so I'm going to go over to running back, and I'm going to grab the running back from Washington. I'm not going Rachaad White in this one. I'm going to go get a guy that's a little bit more controversial in Brian Robinson Jr. So Brian Robinson Jr. So now I have 1 spot left. That's it. I have a total of, hold on, $7,300. And guess who's sitting right there at $7,300? The perfect pick for the Tampa Bay side of the ball, Mike Evans.
Yep.
He just keeps doing it every year. I have $0 remaining and very, very cash buildy. $0 remaining. And I have made 4 decisions. I made Arizona Buffalo decision with Kyler. I made a decision to go Washington Tampa Bay, and I made a decision to go Denver Seattle. That's 3 of them. and then I got my defense, and that's it. And I made a lineup that is very correlated, has no money remaining, very fun. You get guys that are going to have not chalky and chalky guys in this line. Just
I don't think there's a single guy other than Trey McBride that would get over 10% ownership.
yeah,
Maybe Mike Evans, but that's it.
and I love
And
this
so
line.
you got 7 guys, and then including your defense that maybe they'll pick by default as the chalky, but nobody's playing it with confidence like us.
Yeah.
But all those guys, Kyler's going to be under 10%, Javonte under 10%, Brian Robinson, Marvin Harrison for sure. Keon Coleman, like I said, I think he'll be one of the lowest owned of the rookie receivers just because I think people are wait and see, and he's just smack dab in the middle of multiple Buffalo receivers. Jason, nobody's on for no reason. Trey McBride, everybody loves Trey McBride, so got you there.
Fair enough.
And then Mike Evans, great matchup, great environment, great bring back, and then Carolina defense. Yeah, that's perfect way to construct a line.
And I think this is a really good way for people that are new to this game to try to do it. Go find a game that you like, something you want to watch even, because there are times where the chalkiest quarterbacks do not win milli makers, and we could
the
find them.
One thing with this line, and it's not anything against like I hate this player or anything, but Jacksonville Miami is a game that we're going to get a ton of.
Right.
It has none of that game.
It doesn't.
So it's very different because of that.
Yes.
But it's very risky because there's no Tyreek, there's no HN, there's no ETN, there's no any of the Jacksonville players. So it's a little risky in that regard. But again, that's a great way to build.
And we haven't talked about this yet, but we are actually going to be together. We're both fading Houston Indy. Houston Indy is what, the highest total?
I think it's the third highest.
Third highest total. And we're fading it because we don't know who's going to catch a touchdown for Houston. It's too murky. And then on the other side, what, you're going to just play Jonathan Taylor? Because I don't know who to play otherwise. Yeah, and that's expensive. That is so expensive.
I'm not spending, $7,000 for Nico yet, even though it's reasonable. Diggs, again, he's another guy similar to Keenan Allen. We got a ton of in best ball, but 67 for a wait and see. I'm not going there yet. And then Tank Dell, obviously, he's $1,000 cheaper. I believe he's 55.
Yeah,
he's going to be very, very popular, and I don't want any part of it.
Yep.
And if he beats me for the 6 targets and he catches all 6 and he scores a long touchdown, is what it is, man. I'm not gonna bend for it, but that's just a game that we're just before even thinking about it, we both were on the side of just avoiding that game entirely.
And you have to do that. You have to fade those games because everybody's going to be on them. And if you pick the right one to fade, you're going to be sitting pretty. I will now let Cam construct a lineup.
All right. So I'm going to go a similar route in terms of the styles of games that we've been talking about. And obviously, there's some people that I prefer in preference if I'm going to get a little break in some rules, but I want to follow the rules to the T, at least on this one. And maybe certain ones will get a little different, right? So we're going to start off. Josh Allen is my quarterback.
Beautiful.
We're going to find a way to put him in. And then also we're going to just skip down to tight end real quick and put in Dalton Kincaid because you're not playing a Josh Allen line without Dalton Kincaid this week. Again, I think it's perfectly fine if you just want to leave it like that. But just for reference, we're going to have fun. I'm going Curtis Samuel as my secondary stack.
Perfect.
4,900 Q tag. I think he'll be the lowest on the 3. We'll skip up to running back. I'm going to correlate the same game, and I'm going to be very different doing so. So we're going to start off Kenneth Walker for Seattle at 61, too cheap for a workhorse running back. And then everybody, if you're going to go this route and you want to play a Denver player, a lot of people are going to go Javonte. I'm going the game script that Seattle's playing in front, playing ahead. Denver's playing from behind. More snaps for Mr. Jaleel McLaughlin at 4,300. Opens up a lot of salary for everywhere else.
Okay, perfect. Let's see.
So now we'll go to receiver, and we're going to play the big dog. We're going to play Tyreek Hill.
Miami
highest total game, man. You got to get a piece of it, and we're going to bring him back, and we're going to go down to Christian Kirk at 55. Oh. No, we're not going there. We're going 55 to Mr. Christian Kirk. I'm going to just stay with my beliefs on this one. And then my final piece, last guy in, we're going to correlate with that double, and we're going to go with Michael Wilson.
Love that. And guys, we're building lines that come out to $0. You don't have to do that. That is not necessarily the best option, but
again, NFL,
this is beautiful.
NFL, this is the one sport where zero remainder you can get very different. Like I said, M had zero remainder, and only 2 guys I think will be exceeding 10%, if that. Josh Allen will probably be chalky. Kincaid will probably be chalky. Nobody's going to play Michael Wilson. Christian Kirk's hurt. Nobody's going to play him. Tyreek Hill,
Yeah,
he's going to be popular,
Mhm.
but no one's going to play Curtis Samuel, and definitely nobody's going to play Jaleel McLaughlin. And then I don't know what people are going to do with Kenneth Walker, but I think he'll be a little bit overlooked because he's just kind of, there's value down there. There's a lot of people up top that they want to play, and kind of right in the middle. He's kind of like a stepchild, just looking for somebody to love him.
Yep, I love this line. I mean, it's perfectly correlated, like we talked about. It's a fun, interesting line, and we're gonna build one more. I actually have a good idea to how to build it.
Well, we both agreed, like without saying it before we even started this episode, that we're gonna go a certain way. So I'm gonna let him start off with that's how we're gonna build it, and then we're just gonna go from there.
We're gonna build it with a Washington stack.
Okay.
So we're gonna start with the two obvious Washington players. Let me go get the first one at 5,700, Jaden Daniels. And then wide receiver, there is one guy. There's one guy that we really want to get to. Like we said, you could always punt, but we know this guy's got to be in your line if you go Jaden Daniels.
Right.
I'm going to let you pick the Tampa Bay guy.
So let's go with Mike Evans. We're going to fit him in.
Love it.
Chris Godwin is cheap. I think he'll be more popular, but if we're going to get different a little bit somewhere, let's put in Mike Evans, who I think he'll probably be over 10%, but it'll probably be roughly around 13, 14.
Right.
If I had to spitball.
So we didn't double stack this.
Yeah.
And so that's something interesting because I think that makes it perfect to go get the running back that is correlated with the defense, guys. Chuba Hubbard, why not? He's correlated with this defense. We have a correlated stack here. Mike Evans, I love, and I also think it's really great because look how cheap you have your quarterback in your stacked wide receiver. Makes so much sense to me. It's your turn. What game? Right. Tell me.
So this is and maybe we didn't make a look and have the same thought, but this is what I want to do with this tournament line because I don't think many people are going to do this. They're going to pick one guy or the other guy.
Okay.
Put in both Kincaid and McBride.
Beautiful. I love that idea. Guess who's correlated? Both of those guys. They make so much sense together. And they have a ton of upside, whereas 58? Oh, man, I got to find him. There he is. So, ton of upside for both of those guys. Second option in his offense, most likely. Maybe first for the first week, for sure. And then Kincaid is red zone, red zone, red zone. Let's get some touchdowns. Wow, that is fun, for sure. Well, now I have to think, because I kind of want to do... How much money do I have?
59 per?
That's tough. Because I wanted to think about Miami Jacksonville, but I don't know. ETN's a little expensive. What other games do we have here? See, we didn't talk about this before, but it comes together. Don't y'all worry. We'll get it all together. I have 59. Houston, Indy, Cincy, good. Jacksonville, Miami. See, I want to play this game, but we've done that a lot, so I want to see if I can find a different one. That one would be interesting. I just don't know who I would get for the Giants. Let's go see this game. Okay. I'm going to start with the wide receiver position.
Okay.
And I'm going to... No. Let's go Javonte.
Javonte?
Yeah. Let's try it. And then if it doesn't work, we'll just...
Oh, I know what it makes it work. DK Metcalf.
Oh, perfect. Look at us. Bang. Why not? It's so... I mean, we didn't even try to do anything crazy. We just decided to go with a build that we thought would make sense. Start with the Washington. It worked out when we got Chuba Hubbard. We made 5 decisions, but truly it all just kind of fell into place.
And again, this is all going to be kind of low owned. Maybe Jaden Daniels flirts with 10%.
Fine.
Obviously, Terry McLaurin, very, very chalky. McBride and Kincaid are going to be 2 of the most popular tight ends. But next to no one plays double tight end.
Yeah.
DraftKings is the one platform that is completely reasonable to do because Kincaid and McBride, you look at the 6,000 range and it's just like, well, he's going to outscore him. He has more upside than him. Maybe this week there's a couple more values like Malik Neighbors and Drake London that, yeah, maybe they're too cheap. But guess what? They're thinking that too. And so that just puts even less ownership on a double tight end stack of this nature.
Yep. This is an awesome tournament line. I really like this. I don't think Javonte will be that chalky, like you said. Mike Evans might be, but who's getting DK? when you have 4,900 JSN, and then they're really who's playing that game other than there's not very many people that are going to have that game, in my opinion, and we had it in every line basically.
Right.
So I really like this line; it's really cool.
Yeah.
So
it's a fun way.
Yeah. So that was our last line. That was our build. It's an exciting, cool line. I really think I'm gonna play it. I'm definitely gonna play it. So, let me stop sharing. We appreciate y'all hanging out with us. We, are gonna be doing this every week. We're gonna be putting out Thursday Night Football videos. We're gonna be putting out this video for Maine. We're gonna be putting out Prize Picks looks for shorts, and we're also gonna be doing live videos on Sunday mornings. Oh my gosh, I can't talk. From 8 to 11. So we'll have all kinds of content.
Yeah, we appreciate you guys tuning in. The biggest thing that we want you to take away from this, in addition to liking the video and commenting what you think and who your plays are this week and what you disagree with, join the Discord.
Yeah,
we're getting very, very active. We had a first look vibes play that people just put out lines, and we did a 3-pick together, and it hit. Week 1 of college football season, and we want to do more of that. It's going to be a lot of fun, a lot of free content this year that may not be offered in the future. It's our first year, it's a trial year, and so we're just kind of getting the exposure, we just want eyes. We want eyes and interaction. That's the biggest thing that we want. And you guys go a long way if you're willing to explore this content. If you like it, you enjoy it, and if you defer from it but you do like the content, tell us what you think and what your differences are, and maybe you'll teach us a thing or two.
Yep, absolutely. And we're gonna obviously try to be posting as much as possible on all of our socials. If you get a chance, go check out our socials. Link in the description, like we said. If you want to get on Prize Picks and Underdog, there's going to be links in this description for codes so that you can get deposit bonuses and everything like that. So make sure that you, if you want to be a part of this community, we do everything. We don't just do one thing. I know there's a lot of other content creators that only do one part of this world. We try to do it all because we do it all anyways. Like we literally do this on the weekly. If we didn't have a podcast, we'd still be doing this.
Exactly.
So
I mean, it's just putting faces to a camera at this point. We've been doing this for 5+ years now.
Yep.
Just texting on Sunday mornings at 8 o'clock. Who do you like? Who do you like? Who's fun? Who's different? What are we doing different? We're telling lines. Like, that's what we've done. That's why we've been so good at what we've done. And now it's just like, let's do it even better this time.
Yep.
We appreciate you guys tuning in. Look out for the future content we got, and we will see y'all this Sunday.
Yep, we'll see y'all later. Have a good one.